Welcome to the show, David. It's great to have you today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here today.
So, why don't we start off and just could you tell our audience what Teradata does?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Teradata is a global mobility solutions provider. So we provide a lot of the software that drives the experience behind both outbound study abroad and inbound study abroad, and another of other products like product. Sorry, we're going to have to cut out that out anyways. Um, Things like partnership management. So we really provide that sort of beginning to end solution for study abroad offices, for international student offices to manage the process from beginning to end for those students.
Right. And you recently became the director of study abroad at Teradata. What excited you most about stepping into this role, especially at this time for international education?
Yeah, so this is a really exciting opportunity. And the end goal sort of remains the same for me, having come from higher ed. So the mission is to provide that essential study abroad experience for the student, and do that through an easy pathway for them, for the education abroad advisor, where you have the students find the right experience at the right time for them, connecting them with the right people at the right time. Um, and by taking sort of that philosophy from the university level, where we were managing a couple of thousand students, now at the Teradata level, we can affect that change for quite literally millions of students a year. So it's a really big chance to make a difference on a larger scale and positively impact the lives of a lot of students who are looking to go abroad
Yeah.
in the near future. And that
You
doesn't even count our scholarships and course proposals and everything else. So it's quite a large opportunity.
you've lived and worked abroad in places like Japan and Australia. How did those experiences shape your perspective on study abroad?
Yeah, and that was a really great opportunity post graduation to have that experience and just be able to take that jump. One of the things I hope students get out of their experience, which is what I sort of had in my experience too, besides the academic credit, is just seeing there's other ways out there for people to live and work. They have different perspectives on life and their goals. So having experienced that, it's a really great chance to give students that same chance. And a lot of students, they can come from isolated communities or isolated social circles. So study abroad becomes that kind of critical inflection point in the growth of a student where they understand how much more they can do with their career and their life, especially now that we're more of a globally connected world post
Yeah.
pandemic.
Well, yeah, speaking of being globally connected, I'm just wondering, considering the country's current political climate, I would call it in higher ed tumultuous, unpredictable. How has that affected Teradata? Is this a good time for you, or what's the take from you
Yeah,
from
yeah,
Teradata's perspective?
it's an interesting time. Um, and there's concerns about safety and instability in various countries. So students are looking more for destinations that are probably perceived as more stable. So they're looking for opportunities where they tend to be more English speaking first. I know recently we've seen a big push towards the UK instead of alternative destinations. Because I think students, they may not be as globally connected as we always think, but they are seeing some of the news articles that are coming out about sort of anti-tourism in places like Barcelona, in Japan, in places like that. So they're taking those when they're looking for those first steps to get their chance to go abroad. I think they're looking at what they perceive are safer
Yeah,
destinations
yeah.
for that.
Do you think the overall interest in study abroad has gone up because maybe students want to experience another culture outside of our the U.S.?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons students are always interested in study abroad, and they always that interest continues growing. And I think a lot of that is sometimes it's the experience, sometimes they're looking for the academic credit, but I think a lot of it these days we're seeing is from things like resume building, and they're facing competition from their peers. How do you set yourself apart in a globally connected world? You're not just competing against your peers in the ones coming from the same classroom as you. But when you're looking at jobs now, it's going to be anywhere in the world that you're competing in. So having the study abroad experience on your resume really sets you apart
Yeah.
when they go to have that
That's a great
first
point.
big job interview or
Yeah.
internship interview.
That's a great point.
Um,
You have a new
yeah,
survey out that's shows that 76% of students want to study abroad, and also highlights that more than 90% of students see study abroad as an important to their personal growth. Did you have a moment abroad that really sparked your own personal growth?
Yeah, I mean, I had quite a few, and one of the great things about living over when you're in Asia is that it's so easy to travel to other destinations over there as well. So it's a nice base to explore the rest of the world. But for me, some of that personal growth came in the form of a lot of independence because there's nothing like being dropped down in a country and saying, well, in our day, it was probably a paper map. These days, students are going to have their phone, but here's a paper map. You don't understand the language. You can't read any of the street signs. You can't communicate. So how do you communicate? How do you build relationships with the people there and just say, okay, I've got to get across the city. How do I do that? So, that's a really important piece of personal growth to say, okay, it's me. I'm here. I'm on my own. How do I do this? How do I communicate with people? How do I get across this city if I
Yeah.
don't know the language? Um,
I hadn't really
so
thought about it, but it's one of the defining pillars of academia in a way, because in the last decade we've been under, I would say, extreme competition. There's private competition now. And, people are questioning the value of a degree, but where else can you do something like this, right? Except
yeah,
mainly at a traditional, university. I kind of
yeah,
wish I would have done that. My daughter's interested in that.
hmm
She hasn't done it yet. My wife studied in London for a semester, so I'm a little jealous of those people that have had that experience.
Well, these students get to have some fascinating experiences. I mean, more than a lot. Some students view it as a vacation, which is what we try and get them away from. It's not just a vacation. It's there's academic credit attached to it, and there's a lot of growth factors. But one of the nice things about study abroad is that we really try and get these students to have practical life experiences when they're on these programs. So things like seeing how business works in another country. One of the great experiences I had was taking students through Bloomberg in London. So the students got a chance to go behind the curtain where they don't let any tourists in there at all. We had to have security pre-screening, but they got a chance to actually meet the financial people and the tech people behind the scenes at Bloomberg. And they sat them down at, I think it's called the terminal, the Bloomberg financial feed. And they just said, this is the live feed in the home office. Sit down. We're going to talk about how to use this and how you would use this in business, in international finance.
Right.
Like
Interesting.
those are those kind of irreplaceable
Yeah.
experiences that they get to have as part of that.
You've talked about the UK a little bit, and it came out as the top student destination, with most students aiming at spring 2026 programs. From your experience coordinating programs, what challenges does this kind of concentrated demand create for universities?
Yeah, so kind of like mentioned before, students are looking for that safe step, safe choice. So, I mean, I think really from an interesting standpoint, why are students interested in this destination in particular? But those used to be a stepping stone. And I think what's interesting that we're seeing now is that students aren't necessarily taking that next step. So we're seeing a lot of students take this safe choice, but they're not taking that next step to say, well, I did the 3 weeks or the 6 weeks in the UK. Now it's time for me to go out and look at Japan or Spain or Italy or South Africa and all these other destinations. Um, so students aren't taking that next step as often as they used to. Um, and of course, we start seeing clusters of students. When one student goes to one location, they start building momentum towards that. So it's a difficult proposition to shift that student perception towards, hey, there's other opportunities out there. You don't have to do that one.
Yeah. Do you know if the select set of countries that students travel to has kind of shrunk, basically, because you're saying maybe they want to go to the fewer safe places, so that's the challenge, is like getting everyone their top choice, basically. Right.
Yeah, and one of the fun parts of being in the study abroad, which where I get from my background, is sort of the data scientist, data nerd, where you get to track all of this and visualize all this and look at the trends and then feed that back into your sort of data driven decision making. But there was a lot more differentiation pre-COVID, and post-COVID, we're just not seeing quite the same spread of students across destinations and countries. Italy always remains, a top contender for those. It'll be interesting when we see the Open Doors report come out here in the next year or so, probably November. I think the next one is due, to see how that's changed, because students they're selecting down into fewer destinations than they
Hmm.
have in the past.
Right.
So it's a challenge on the Education Abroad office's point, to try and get the message out to the students and sort of that,
Right.
that ideation phase that where they can think about seeing themselves in other locations.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about the tech now. And talk about your experience at the University of Kentucky. You've led automation and process improvements at the University of Kentucky. How do you think tech-driven efficiencies help institutions handle this surge in study abroad interest?
Yeah, so budgets are tight. That's one thing that we're seeing a lot of right now. There's a lot of contraction in the space. There's no more staff coming in. The money's not there to bring on new people. So what you have is what you have. So how do you do that better? And how do you take advantage of the tools you already have, to automate? So like a lot of universities are Microsoft tenant organizations. So you have things like Power Automate at your disposal. You have other tools that you can use, to say, okay, we don't have any more staff. We can't be manually reviewing all these forms anymore. And students are sending us emails throughout the night, and they're expecting answers by 8 o'clock in the morning when we come in the door. So how do we get ahead of that? How do we get ahead of the students to say, okay, message comes in, we're going to automatically recognize it, we're going to parallelize it, and then run it through our AI agents to look at the file and recognize the need in that email, and then validate the form and store it in your file structure, and then respond to the student, alert a person in an office. And you can do all that automatically now with a lot of tools that universities already have access to. And we really see a shift in the students because the students expect that answer right away. I mean, they're not waiting for that. They don't want to, in our day, we probably, you had to go get a form signed and it was on paper and
Right.
then you walked it over to another office
Yeah.
and then you dropped it in the financial aids, the basket inside the front door.
Yeah, that's
And
not acceptable anymore.
yeah, it's sort of like, well, maybe I'll get an answer in 2 weeks. And, these days, if a student submits a form at 1 o'clock in the morning, they want that feedback right away to say, yep, this is checked off, this is done, I'm ready to move on. So
Your survey that you conducted revealed that 43% of students expect to spend five to $10,000 abroad, and many want more financial aid guidance. How can Teradata or institutions better address the affordability gap?
yeah, so we have to guide students to better programs. It's tough to get students to understand that sometimes a more costly program, doesn't necessarily mean a better program for that. But I mean, other than destinations, students and institutions can look at other opportunities because we have, more virtual opportunities these days. We've seen some actually really great success with, some of our things like virtual internships. So I don't want to name any providers in particular, but if students are looking at an experience and it's $10,000 to do an on-site experience versus less than 1,000 to do a virtual internship, we have students who get some really prestigious placements. So they get placed in a virtual internship like marketing and digital promotion in Dublin for Netflix, and we've had students placed at Nike and Airbnb, and all these big name companies, which again feeds back into the resume building aspect of this. But they don't have quite the same from an intercultural competency building perspective. May not be quite as impactful as an on-site experience, but from a cost perspective, those are so much more
Yeah.
accessible for these students.
I have a question. I might ramble on this to get it out here, but basically, I'm thinking about my day in college, and I would have loved to travel abroad. I was a student who's just trying to get through college. I wasn't really focused. I got a marketing communication degree after I declared it a year and a half or 2 years in. I, and so I would choose more to like, I want to have an experience somewhere. I don't really care what programs they have. Hopefully I can knock off some of my GE requirements and it won't slow me down too much, but I want to go travel. When I talk to my kids and I've talked to other college, younger, traditional age college kids, they're so focused on their program. Like my program is data science and linguistics. Talk to my son. He's like, I want to travel, but the countries that can really support my program, I don't want to go to. So I'm not going to travel abroad. It's such a different way to look at it. Do you see different, like, what kind of student is that ideal student that's going to travel abroad?
Well, what you're talking about there has been an actual very purposeful transition on the part of the university. They've been sort of planting that seed. We've been planting that seed for many years now to show to the students it's not, you don't pick based on the country, although there still are going to in some capacity either way, but it's been very purposeful to say, no, you go abroad based on the opportunity for your degree
Yeah.
program. So that's been a very purposeful change to do that.
Yeah. And my son was exactly in that mindset. I'm like, okay, different than I would have just
Yeah.
wanted to travel. I was not as focused on my degree as probably as definitely my kids are.
Yeah. Well, but they start using it early for the students when, we're seeing the academic advising step happening as early as when they're coming in the door and sometimes before as well, to say, look, you can plan this now. You want to take Calc 4? You can take Calc 4 in Germany with one of our faculty who are traveling. Like they build it into their academic plan now, and they look forward to that to say, no, I know already that the summer after my junior year, I'm going to Germany and I'm going to take this class. And they have that planned out a couple of years ahead of time.
So you've been both a program coordinator and a developer. You've seen the human side and the technical sides. How do you think that combination helps you tackle barriers like high costs and lack of information, which 48% and 17% of students cited?
Yeah, so this is a fun part where technology can kind of help us tackle it from the university side as well. So using things like AI to consolidate feedback from students. So when we have students go on these programs, we tend to get thousands of bits of feedback that can be in various forms. Some of it's numerical, some of it's written form, some of it's verbal form, some of it's advising appointments as students are reentry for students. But using things like AI to help us consolidate that data and actually drive decision makings for the university. So we talk about this as an example in some of our AI talks. I sort of have some partners in crime, I guess you'd call. We're sort of some AI and education abroad experts that we work together on these opportunities for institutions. Meek McFarland out of Barcelona SAE and John Hibbert out of Northeastern. But things like, let's say you've got a portfolio of programs. You can take all of your feedback, you can take the pricing, you can take the flight costs and the flight time and the duration, and you can boil that down to very concrete numbers that you can take to a provider and say, look, here's our normalized distribution curve. Here's providers A, B, C, and D. Your provider E, you're way off the spectrum over here. So let's talk about cheaper options for the students, or changing up how we're providing programs to students so they are more affordable. And they are things like, AI is great for pulling out, kind of automated sentiment analysis from written feedback. So perceived value for the dollar that they're getting out of study abroad programs, or value for their degree program. You can pull all of that and reduce that down to numbers that you can very easily take to those providers and say, look, you're not cutting it. You're part of this portfolio or you're not. You need to make this better for our students or change
Yeah,
up the experiences. So
that
that's
sounds
part
like
of
a
the
great,
fun. Yeah,
great
it's the
use
tech
case.
side of
Yeah,
things where it's like data-driven decision making is the key, sort of the end of all that loop that we can now do.
yeah, that
So
makes
much
so much
easier than it
sense.
used to be.
Makes so much sense for being a use case for AI. Your survey found that 40% of students develop interest in study abroad as early as high school. How should universities rethink recruitment and engagement at this earlier stage?
Yeah, this is a fun one. So there's always push and pull on this when it comes to students sort of pre-matriculation or pre-enrollment to the university. And we see it there's kind of a divide between the students and then the parents. The parents almost become more of a critical factor to this. So the students are interested in study abroad. They hear about it, they know about it, they want to go on it. But the parents hear about it, at orientation or even earlier when they're choosing a university, and you could almost see that terror building behind their eyes. Um, and it's become, I mean, I even remember these are interesting times tabling for the university, representing the education abroad office or the experience, and being there and seeing the students come up or the prospective students coming up, and then like, hey, you can go abroad. We'll do it in your degree program. We can get you scholarships for it. You can go for less than the cost of staying here on campus. And then the parents come over and immediately go, wait, hold on a second. What are you talking about? No, 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 you're not doing that. And they kind of drag them away. Um, so the university, I mean, they're getting better about that. So we see it now earlier in the process. They showcase it as part of the university campus tour, and they stop in front of the international building. They talk about the experience and what they can get out of it, and it becomes a selling tool for the
Yeah.
university.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have to do it really carefully, and I think we're seeing a lot more universities lean on that aspect of faculty-led programs for which the students hear, oh, I get to travel with my friends and part of a course, and the parents always hear, oh, good, they're going with someone
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
going
I
to be
hadn't
really.
thought about the parent influence. My wife works as a student affairs, administrator for many years. And I always hear the stories of like the helicopter parents that are checking in on their kids, nervous about what their kids are doing, calling like my kid's not answering my phone. Can you check on them?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
yeah, there must be a real conversation between the college student who wants to study abroad and the parent who's just terrified of everything.
yeah, they
Uh,
are, and they see disparate aspects of it because they see, oh, my student's going to be out of the pocket of safety or out of the sphere of it. It's just we have different terms, and you hit one of them, which is helicopter parent. And recently, we kind of joke about different ones like jet fighter parent and some of the other ones. It's
so social media, especially like Instagram, was the top way students heard about study abroad. How do you see digital communication evolving in the international education space?
Oh, we've definitely seen an effect, and it's both a blessing and a curse on that. Um, we start to see clusters and super clusters of programs and countries. So social media tends to make students interested in it, and there might be like an influencer student in one part of the university, and they showcase their experience on study abroad, and now next year every student that walks in the door wants that same experience in that same country with that same study abroad provider. So we're all for getting students interested in going abroad, but we have to find ways to sort of offset some of those clustering effects that social media pushes students towards that one destination. So they're being bombarded with that one experience. So how do we diversify the message? How do we, is it email? Is it social media? Is it on campus events? Is it, how do we get, things to say, okay, there are more places to go out there than the traditional big five countries in study abroad. Let's have you look at, the Philippines or Malaysia or um, other locations that just might be something different where there hasn't already been sort of a path pre-scored for them for
You
that.
mentioned peer influence. I guess that would be huge. Based on your leadership with Teradata super users, how important is peer collaboration when addressing improvements students want, like clear financial aid information and better program alignment?
Yeah, so one of the great things about the study abroad and the education abroad community in particular is that we're kind of all in it together. So we're not competing for the same students. The students are already there at the university. I mean, other than bragging rights, which is always a thing between education abroad offices, but we're all in it together for the same end goal for the students. So the great thing with the super users is that these tend to be the tech people, the data nerds, the automation specialists, or just people kind of getting their feet into that or dipping their toes into that. So it gives them a chance to say, "Oh, hey, you figured out a way to build this AI process into the communication pathway for the students that helps them. Let's all figure it out and show us what you did and show us what you were doing under the hood." to do this, or what are you doing for this automated communication pipeline over here? So collaboration tends to be a big part of particularly the international ed community. It's a very small community. We tend to know each other a lot, but the great thing is we're all sharing that. So, by having one institution come up with something great and new and interesting, it really provides that for students at all the other
Yeah.
institutions as well. So
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
financial aid information, how to, if one student or one institution finds a better way to communicate that with the students, we all
Right.
benefit from it.
Right. Your survey showed that students place a strong value on career skills like adaptability and cross-cultural communication. How do you see technology supporting study abroad offices in highlighting those benefits to students and employers?
Yeah, so we're starting to see this more with universities using technology to have more of a sort of a pre, during, and post coaching, and even cultural communication and cultural competency testing and advising while they're having their experience. Because we can do this both sort of live and asynchronously, the coaching is really key, and the technology has really helped us do that now. So we have a lot of success with universities building these, we call them like sort of study abroad 101, study abroad coaching, study abroad co-pilot, where they have to take a course from the home institution even while they're abroad. So it keeps the student in connection with the university. And a lot of that is, it's teaching them, how do you articulate your experience? You're there, you're having this experience. Okay, if you really want to add this to your resume and make an impact in the future, let's get you in front of a couple of employers over there and get you a chance to interview managers of restaurants or behind the scenes at technology companies. So really that live stream back and forth between the students and the university um, just helps them long term in developing their career skills.
Yeah. Well, if you had to sum it up, David, how will these survey insights shape Teradata's long-term vision and your own role in helping students access transformative global experiences?
Yeah, so this report really, the thing I like about this one is it really helps answer a lot of the why factor. So I kind of think of it like a companion report to something like the Open Doors report, which, if we have any sort of data scientists listening, that's kind of nirvana for everyone. There's so much data there to extract from that. But the Open Doors is a lot of, it's sort of where and when and maybe what they were taking. Something like the Voice of the Student more tries to dig into the why are they going? Why are they going at all? Or why are they going there? So examining the why factor really helps us when we're building out development pathways for the software to develop the tools around the student experience. So things like targeted guides and a lot of hand holding through the initial contact phase, and tools for connecting the advisor and the student together, so that the student gets the right information from the right person at the right time. And institutions don't usually have the capacity to build these themselves. So that's what's so fun about this, is we get to build it once, and then so many institutions get to benefit from it, which is really fun.
Love it. Love what you're doing, David. If someone wants access to this report, what's the best way to get that to them?
So the best way to access that is through the ebooks on our website, is
Okay.
where that's currently published on the
Okay.
Teradata.com website.
All right. Well, I will put a link to your website and David's LinkedIn profile in the show notes. It was really great having you on. All things study abroad.
Thanks. I appreciate being here.